Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Loan Officer Wealth Podcast. We have a very special episode for you today because we have the president of CENTUM with us, Chris Turcotte. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, Chris, how's it going? Chris and Chris, what could go wrong, right? Chris squared.
That's it, right on. So, for our listeners, I know your background. We've known each other for a long time in the mortgage industry, but can you bring us up to speed with how you got into the mortgage industry, your history, and how you got to become to be the president of the CENTUM Network?
I will try to do it as quickly as possible. So I've been in banking my entire life. So started with the biggest financial institution, good old blue and yellow. Started there. Ironically, when I was 17 years old, I started in the cash cage because I wasn't old enough to work up front. You had to be 18 in
No
Manitoba.
way.
Originally from Manitoba, so you had to be 18 to work up front to transact. So I was the little guy in the back helping with the cash counts. I would service the ATMs, load them, everything else, return people's cards when they got stuck. I started there and stayed with that lender the vast majority of my early adult life. They had a great university program. We're not going to go down that route, but I had some personal life events, which you can read about and is very well documented. You can go do that. I had some personal life events that made an education program they were offering very valuable, where if you gave them a certain amount of time, they would help fund university. Went and got my commerce degree, and because of that, stayed with that lender. I was a private banker from the time I was 22 years old. That's a little uncomfortable, doing refinances and talking about debt consolidation with people that were old enough to be my parents, and cleaning
Yep.
that up. To then an account manager. To then I went into the mortgage division. This was back when, if you're a personal banker, you also did mortgages. This was before they even split it off. So if you're a
Oh,
personal,
wow.
nowadays it's like product and we schlep, and then there's a department for that. Every bank, by the way, not picking on the bank I was formerly with. But back in the day, if it was they came in for a mortgage, you were doing a mortgage app. So got a good taste of everything in depth and very, very hands-on. Went to an account manager. Then the last stop was I got to be a part of a very unique division of the bank where they had a US footprint as well. So I went to their division, ironically called CENTUM
Huh.
Anyways, it's just made that realization now, where I was going to be essentially a private banker on both sides of the border. So I would handle all their Canadian, this was specifically for snowbirds of a certain stature. I would handle
Yep.
all their banking when they were in Canada. I would handle all their banking when they were down in the US. It was super neat. It was first of its kind. I was young and hungry and looking to grow, so I went and did that. Through that, I actually had a very prominent customer that has a very large Canadian business here. And through that, they had offered me the opportunity to kind of leave the bank for the first time. I think I was 27 and left the bank, had the chance to travel the world, selling their product and things like that. Did that for a very short period of time. At the time, they were downsizing quite a bit. So I joined them. A year later, they had a crisis. They did some downsizing. I felt a little uncertain in there. I went a different division of theirs, and that downsizing and continued. Very, very public downsizing. Let's call it, how old am I now? Almost 15 years ago. And I got packaged out. Coincidentally, during that package, myself and I think 3,800 other people all in one day. Actually, come to think of it, very similar to what we're seeing today with a lot of companies. So I guess from
Wow.
that person count, it's small by today's standards, where we're reading every day that a new company is letting go 10,000 people a day. Anyways, I digress. At that point, it was actually halfway through a mortgage application. I had met my wife, going through the house, and I think this is a valuable piece of information. So going through the house, the condo we were looking at, I owe my entire career. I would not be sitting here today if it were not for a real estate agent by the name of Graham Garden. I think he's
Huh.
still out. His son is now in the business. Everything. Oddly enough, we were never referral partners after I got into the business. But I'm walking through this condo, and he was so good at selling the mortgage broker that he had a relationship with. And he said, "Hey, like, have you been pre-approved?" Yeah, I'm former RBC. No, there we go. I'm former RBC employee. I think I've still got staff rates. I got people that are going to take care of me. Don't worry, I'm taken care of. And he was like, "Well, do you know what rate you have?" Man, this guy's persistent. Like, I have a good idea what the rate is. And then he says this, and this is a beautiful thing. So any people in the loan business, if you want to coach your referral partners, your realtor referral partners, realtors, if you want to take care of your mortgage brokers, great line. He said, would you agree that while you're walking through this, could I just get my mortgage guy on the phone and he can just quote you his best rates?
Hmm.
If you think it's a great rate, is it worth maybe sitting down with them? There's zero obligation. I was like, yeah, sure. Gets the mortgage broker on the phone. Mortgage broker quotes a rate. And I say to my, at the time, fiance, I was like, he's quoting me variable rates. Like those are
Right.
so low. Those are clearly variable rates. And like, no. And I said, yeah, he's quoting me variable rates. I had, slightly higher at a fixed rate. And the mortgage guy goes, that is my fixed rate. I
No
go,
way.
uh-oh, uh-oh. So ate some humble pie, went and saw this mortgage broker, got educated to the process and understood, because when you're from the financial institution side, you're taught that mortgage broker is bad, especially 15 years ago. Oh, you bad
Oh yeah.
credit if you go to a mortgage broker. You're meeting in a back alley to get those funds. It's changed dramatically. So I had that negative connotation, went and saw the mortgage broker. Halfway through, I get, unfortunately, laid off. Bank has already signed off on all conditions. I didn't know that. Right. So I call the broker and I say, look, first of all, you've opened my eyes to a whole new industry. So thank you very much for that. Through that conversation, I had learned that they was commission based and everything else. And I said, can I at least write you a check for your time or something? And the guy's, whoa, are you using somebody else? I said, no. Like unfortunately, I just got packaged out, and I don't have a job. So when the bank calls to verify this, unfortunately, it's going to it's not going to work out. And it gets really quiet. And he goes, what if I told you conditions were satisfied like days ago? I'm like, what are you saying? He goes, well, you need a place to live, don't you? And I'm like, all right, I'm going to, okay, fair enough. We're going to soldier on. But when I had showed up to that interview, I knew my TDS, I knew my GDS. I told him everything. I knew exactly what prepayment privileges I wanted and everything. And he paused me and he's like, what does it say? You says you manage a bread division for a big company. Like, why do you know so much about banking? I told him the story. So he's like, if you want the condo, it's yours. And secondly, you just told me you got laid off. You just told me you got a big severance. You clearly know lending. Have you ever thought about being a mortgage broker?
It's a smart guy.
Yeah. And he's like, you've got all that severance sitting in your account, so you've got a safety net. What have you got to lose? Well,
Yeah.
I'm originally from Winnipeg. I was brand new to Brandon, Manitoba. I had moved there for a girl, had no sphere of influence whatsoever. It was a girl that was not my wife, that had imploded before it happened. So I had no sphere of influence, but I thought, why not? Just to fast forward to the spirit of time, became a mortgage broker, obviously. Within 6 months, I was his top producing agent.
Huh.
Within probably about a year and a half, I was out producing him and his entire brokerage combined. And
Wow.
it was, and I'd found my calling. The one thing I always got reprimanded for on the institutional side was get through the interview, sell the product, you get another meeting.
Right.
We weren't encouraged to do a lot of counseling and a lot of training and credit counseling and credit education. And this fed that side of me. I got to take care of the consumer. Fast forward, ironically, that was for one brand. Across the road was a CENTUM that was owned by Century 21. They had heard about me. Their realtors were working with me. They would constantly try and pitch me to see if I would come over. I politely declined. There was two gals that worked for CENTUM. They're both in their 60s. And I was kind of like, and I was 20 something, a hot shot, right? I'm like, I don't want to work with to be like working with my mom every day. By the way, caveat, both those women are the closest things I have to a living mother to this day now. So it's funny how things
Wow.
work out. Careful what you say initially. Secondly, it was six guys at my current brokerage. It was beer o'clock every day at 3 o'clock. So I didn't go.
Right.
Then one day, the owner of the C21 that owned the CENTUM called me and said, listen, it's not a sales pitch, put your guard down. There's been some things that have transpired here. I think I've got an opportunity that might change your life. And I was like, well, how do you ignore a statement like that?
Right.
And
Yeah.
and sure enough, it was, the ladies that had run the brokerage, they weren't getting any younger. And the realtors that had owned it were like, wait a minute, if these girls retire, what do we do with this thing?
Right. Yep.
It's just going to die. So we were able to work something out, and I ended up purchasing my own brokerage. Ironically, moved across the street. Within probably a year and a half, we had 9 brokers. And then when I left in 2016, late 2016, December 2016. So let's call it 2017. We were locations. We had over 20 brokers, and we were funding over $100 million out of little old Brandon, Manitoba. So
Wow.
we had some fun. So anyway, I know it's a long-winded story. There's some important context there, but so what's really interesting about my current role, the call came to see if I'd be interested. They had this Brandon. First of all, they had to Google where Brandon was. People here at head office, they had to Google where Brandon was, and were like, "How is this kid doing this?" And I think there was an opportunity where they wanted a change in leadership, and they needed new leadership, and I had the opportunity. So uniquely, what I bring to the table is I've been in every seat. And
Right.
most people that have been with us for at least 5 years, they saw me in the top three for mortgage agents
Right.
every single year. They saw our office in the top three. They saw me speak on stage. I was often one of the speakers at the conference on social media and marketing and data mining and things like that. So there was an instant, I certainly didn't deserve it, but and I've worked hard to earn it since then, but there was a respect there because they
Yeah.
knew that I didn't have a corporate agenda. Everything that came out of my mouth was, look, here's how I would do this on a grander scale. And I just coincidentally happened to become a lucky SOB that had the chance to come do it on a national level. That, sorry for the long-winded story.
No.
That is me in a nutshell.
That is amazing. Okay, so much of the fundamentals in life never change. Time doesn't really matter, especially here in the mortgage industry. Yes, technology is changing certain aspects of what we do very much so, but that growth, I'm very interested in what you did. So you acquired the brand new brokerage across the road for the first time. You sat down and you were like, okay, like I'm sure the first time you pulled up in your car, parked in the same spot and walked into the other building, you get that moment where you're just like, whoa, what am I doing? How do I pull this off? How do I make sure that I make this thing happen? So what was your plan of action, and how did you create that level of growth in that small of a marketplace? Really, what drove that growth for you?
Yeah, so there's a few things, and there was a few gifts there. Like, I'll be very honest, there was a few gifts there. Timing being one of them. So, fun fact about the walking in the door for the first time. So coincidentally, we went for lunch and he proposed the idea. I accepted it when I was on my honeymoon. I was standing on the beach in St. Lucia. I have never been in the brokerage. I've seen
Wow.
it. I bought this thing sight unseen. So I want to leverage what you had said there. The very first day, once I'm back, I'm tanned. I'm about to walk into the business that I now own that I've never seen. I walk in and there is nothing but wood paneling on all the walls. Remember that, like, circa our basements when we were young? That wood
Yep.
paneling and 2-inch bright orange shag carpet.
That sounds amazing.
Oh, nowadays, I mean, like, you know how retro and amazing that would be? Oh, yeah, like urban barn all over that, or like restoration hardware, like, boom, I can make that pop now. But back in 2011, that was awful, right? And I was just like,
Yep.
oh. So speaking about, like, what are the things you prioritize? I think it can lean into it. So the very first thing was, how do we show up? How are we
Yep.
showing up to the consumers, right? Because don't forget, in 2011, it still wasn't, we didn't have market share. Mortgage brokers didn't have market share in Canada, right? US,
Yep.
obviously, very, very different story. In Canada, it's been very, very slow to adapt. Then I think around 2015, 16, it kind of went on a rocket ship. And then, of course, the new generation, the research generation, is now going online, and brokers are starting to gobble up that market share even more. But in 2011, it was very important. How do we show up? How do we change that connotation that we're about, the back alleys, the misfits, the everything else? So my mindset was, how do we institutionalize in all ways? How do we show up in a professional manner? Walking into that office, I was like, okay, didn't expect a reno. I'm not handy, but we'll figure this out. But next was looking online. What does our website look like? Do we have any calls to action and everything else? Don't forget, it's 2011. Nobody knew what a CTA was. CTA didn't exist
Yep.
back in 2000. There was very few people doing sales funnels and everything else. You were one of the very first people at the forefront, but you were a unicorn. In a lot of ways, sadly, you still are a unicorn. But especially back then, there was no call to actions, anything else. So step one was websites, how we showed up in the marketplace, how were we presenting ourselves. No one had ever done a realtor coffee. Nobody had ever gone, and I'm talking all of Brandon. No mortgage broker had ever gone into, asked to be in a team meeting at a real estate office. It was very, very,
Wow.
very grassroots. 2011 as well. Nobody had a Facebook page. and nobody had
Yep.
ever even thought of doing a mortgage video. And they're
Yep.
still there. If you go look at my YouTube channel, 2010 is when I started doing mortgage videos. Nobody even had
Wow.
Facebook pages, and I was doing mortgage videos and sending them to clients. So when I said by
Huh.
timing, I happened to be the right age.
Yep.
It was definitely an old boys club back then, where traditionally speaking, middle-aged to older males owned the brokerages. The young bucks didn't own the
Yeah.
brokerages. I just happened to be lucky enough that I got to own the brokerage because of where I was, timing, everything else. So I just did things very, very differently. How we transformed,
Yep.
so how we showed up, we did educational videos on a variety of topics. Always, we had regular weekly vlogs back when they weren't called vlogs, because again, no one was doing them. There was a community page, which a lot of cities have them, like a community kind of events page and message forums and everything else. I would post in there those videos, and then I would welcome questions and answer questions. If you go to Mortgage Brokers Brandon, Manitoba, I have not done an ad there in over 6 years. Those message board posts still come up first, that you should use Chris to get a mortgage, because there was so much
Wow.
data in there. It just SEO'd to the nth degree, right? We just did all the things that nobody else was doing, and we were consistent because we had systems and processes. Tuesday was filming,
Right.
no matter what. Didn't matter if I was sick, didn't matter if we had the agenda set the time before, and it was systematic. We record on a Tuesday, we deploy on a Thursday, sometimes a Friday going into the weekend. Feature sheets were not a thing back then. No one was doing them because everyone thought, oh, it's a waste of time and realtors don't like them anyways. Create a process where you could create a listing or a open house rate sheet for every single open house that weekend. Just create a bot and a process to do it. There's no effort. So we were sending them out to,
Yep.
like, there might be 300-400 open houses that weekend. They all had it. Who cares if only 5 hit? You know what I mean? So it was
Yeah.
about systematizing our processes and being consistent in the beginning. And then from there, we switched to quality. So
Yep.
luckily, the two ladies that were there, they were veterans. They knew exactly what they were doing. And because I came from the institutional side, I owe so much of what I do with coming from the institutional side. I just had a higher degree of training, I had a financial education. And because of that, I think I had a skewed view of who should be mortgage brokers that I owe everything to, by the way. So my first, and coincidentally, the two first brokers I recruited, they are now partners of that brokerage. And the
Oh,
top
wow.
producers, they were mobile mortgage specialists at other financial institutions. Because I
Yep.
didn't just look to grow, because I started talking to the real, because no one else was, sadly. Like I said, no
Yep.
one was doing coffees, nobody's doing meetings. So I befriended all of them. They knew that if my phone rang, I would pick up on the first ring, everything else. I had their trust. So I started asking them, I know I'm the best guy at this, but who's second and third? And that's literally the joke I would make. Look, I know I'm the best at this, but who's second and third? Who's really wowing you? And they gave me names. And sure enough, they were mobile mortgage specialists that were trained by the banks already. They had that same acumen,
Yeah.
that same quality, and everything else. And more importantly, they had the endorsement of the people that I needed the endorsement from. The realtors were sitting there saying
Right.
they do a great job. Why is that important? Especially if you're a startup brokerage, you don't have to become educator nearly as much. You're
Yeah.
teaching them tools and processes. You're not babysitting them to know that they know how to do mortgages. And they already have the trust of the realtors, which means as long as any new tools or processes, feature sheets, everything else, anything you add to them is just going to elevate them. And they've already got that trust, which means as long as your value proposition is strong, they should be able to get there, make more money, and be elevated from your value proposition. And that was
Yeah.
phase one.
Man, that is incredible. And I feel like where you were with realtors back then is where our industry is still lagging so hard
Oh, it's
with
crazy.
financial planners, insurance advisors, divorce attorneys. Like, there are so many opportunities to build a show and have a local following in a local marketplace where you are the lighthouse and you're just showcasing and shining a light on different guests with different expertise every single week. Like, every single mortgage broker should be leaning into those channels. But if you look at our industry, it's like, okay, I call realtors and I do my realtor calls every week. It's like, look at the amount of referral partner sources that you have available to you right now that are just completely untapped. I think still in the mortgage industry today, there's an incredible opportunity out there for us.
100%. And I think it's how we show up. That was something I always coached. Don't call realtors looking for deals. Call
That's right.
realtors Call realtors with a very strong value proposition on how you can make them more money and you can be a business partner. That is the
Yes.
fundamental difference that everyone's like, oh, by the way, this is what I have for rates right now. By the way, this is the product I have. All that translates to, first of all, most of us just listen to respond. So, they're not listening anyways. But if you make it all about them, and that was really what we did, it was the feature sheets. Look, why don't I build the feature sheets? Yeah, there's rates on there, but more importantly, anyone that walks through the on how much of a down payment they have, they'll know exactly how much it costs to pull the trigger on that, and they'll know the next steps. But I'll feature all your photos, everything else, and that's table stakes nowadays. 2011, it wasn't, but it was even just how we talked about it. I'm going to make it quick and easy for people to see how affordable your listing is. Nothing to do about me. My name was already on there. No duh. If they liked it, of course they're going to go to they're going to call the number on the bottom. Make it about them. We created an open house tab on our brokerage's homepage because we had very, very good SEO. We paid for Google. We had a lot of traffic because we knew what we were doing. Our one of the main partners there now, we got her Google certified in like 2012. We were way ahead of the curve. So we were able to sit down as a little mortgage brokerage. We'd sit down with the owners of the big real estate offices and say, oh, hey, pull up your web traffic. Well, 9 times out of 10, they'd be like, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
Back then.
Oh yeah.
And
Still today. Yeah,
oh,
absolutely.
it's crazy. But then even the ones that did, I'd be like, oh, that's adorable. Looks like my open house page gets 12 times the traffic. And that's how we would sell it as well. By the way, partnering with us, our preferred partners, and we had a matrix for what made them preferred partners. We'll make sure that your open house listing shows up on our page. Obviously, we had to work with the real estate board and everything provincially, and it was a little bit of a hurdle, but we did it. But again, it made it about them. Partnering with us, we're going to get you more views than even your own brokerage website does. We can increase your chance of selling your home. Make it about them. And nobody does it.
Yeah.
Most mortgage brokers, they'll see realtors as a pain and everything else. It blows my mind. But the thing if you want anything out of anyone in life, general, period, first of all, just be a good human. But hey, we're not going to try and go down that idealistic side of things today, Chris. We're not going to solve all the world's problems. But if you're hoping to get anything out of anyone, you got to over deliver. You got to show up with more on your plate for them. And everyone is so afraid of getting burned or giving away too much. And as a result, you get nothing. So,
Yep.
yeah.
There is a golden nugget in there for our listeners. And I'll go back to the old axiom of like everybody wants to buy a house and nobody wants a mortgage, right? And yes, as rates have ticked up, we are seeing more and more people investing in research in the broker channel and going out and getting rates and getting pre-qualified before they talk to the realtor. But if you're looking to generate traffic, if you're looking to generate opportunities to give out to your realtors and all of your referral partners in your marketplace, it pays to be talking about real estate. When you highlight listings, when you showcase the local real estate market, when you put scenarios on social media, when you take the conversation and make it about the real estate part of the transaction, your engagement goes up, your views go up, your SEO goes up. Like you can outrank a local real estate agent in a local real estate market by generating quality content on your mortgage platform. How valuable is it for you to be ranked when people search real estate in your marketplace? Like, I digress. We're doing some really cool things with artificial intelligence and SEO
I
right
was
now.
just gonna say, and in the era of Chat GPT, you have zero excuse. Like,
Zero.
people don't realize we could do it right now and I can hold it out. You can go to Chat GPT and say, write me 10 real estate blogs on Nova Scotia real estate, and you will get 10 blogs instantly. It's there's no excuse anymore. There is no excuse anymore. It's just a lack of knowledge. And I tell mortgage brokers all the time, for the last, 18 months prior to this, what was everyone's excuse, Chris? I don't have time. I'm too busy. Because you're getting default success, right? You've never been slower than you are right now. And we just saw the announcement, the US, maybe 40 minutes ago, the US just upped rates. They decided they're going to go up 0.25 again, right? So there's going to be some fear again in the market. We had inflation reports coming in Canada much lower. There was a ton of optimism. This should mean there's no more rate increases. And within 24 hours now there might be rate increases. I bring that up because it's going to remain slow for a little while longer. What excuse do you have anymore between the technology and the fact that there's professionals out there that will help you do this? You just finished 2021 where you had the most success, even a brand new person. You had default success just for showing up. Hoping most people, one, if you're brand new, hope you save for taxes. If not, I feel for you right now. But providing you are a financial professional, so I'm going to assume you all saved for taxes and you put away a little bit of a war chest. Now is the time to leverage those free tools, but then to also look at consultants and adding people to your team so that you're showing up your absolute best. Because the fact is, like, nobody else is right now. Like, there is a golden era that brokers have right now to elevate how they show up. Question is, Chris, how do we lead them to water?
Yeah, that's it. And I mean, being ready for the market timing. Well, I'll digress because I am not an economist, but I'm looking to the spring as a positive time in the industry. But we will see what happens. So, Chris, I want to be cognizant of your time because I know how valuable it is. But one other question. So, all of the knowledge that you've brought up. Now you're the president, national organization in the mortgage industry, doing a lot of recruitment, coaching and training a lot of people in the mortgage industry right now. And I'm interested in when you go and you talk to your top franchises and you talk to the top people in your network, what are the fundamentals that you're going back to right now? Where are you focused right now on where does the business come from? And what should people in the industry be focused on right now in order to move the needle 3 months, 6 months, 9 months down the road?
Yeah, it's a great question, and the timing is impeccable because just before this, I did our monthly mastermind. So with all our brokerage owners, I personally do a monthly mastermind class where we talk about that, like just fundamental pillars of your brokerage right now. So this last one just an hour ago was on lender efficiencies, right? So we know with lenders, and I'm going to go a couple different ways. One of them is lender efficiency right now because you're doing half the volume you did last year. So you really got to put, and so many brokers are just, I'm going to say it because I was one too. And yeah, a little bit of shock value here, and I'm going to call some people out and they might get triggered. A lot of broker owners are asleep at the wheel. They hire good brokers that just know how to get business. So they're just sitting there on autopilot, right? Autopilot's not going to cut it this year. It's just not. So if you're doing half the volume, the class we just did was about, are you being intentional with your volume? Are you marketing to your agents? Do you have a strong communication plan? And do you have a flag on the hill for each one of those lenders? And are you articulating a message? If we hit this tier, we all make this much more money. That's more critical than ever. 2021, you were hitting every status anyways. So the one we just did, and one of the steps to your answer would be, are you being smart with the volume that you're getting right now? Because there is a way to maximize your ROI. If you hit the status at 6 or 7 lenders, last year, you're not going to do it this year. Do you have a plan to make sure you hit it with 2 or 3 though, so that your revenues for the deals you do close stay strong? It's also a time to revisit how you show up, right? I don't want to hear that I don't have time for social media. I don't have time to mine my database. You have nothing but time. I don't want to hear I don't know what to write. I don't have any ideas. You have a robot that will quite literally do that for you now, and it's free.
Yep.
Mining your own database right now, knowing how to do it, that's where I would focus right now. Refinance opportunities have been abundant. There's going to be people coming up for renewal in a new world where rates weren't 2%, and understanding those, the shocking part is brokers are being reactionary right now. They're waiting till they get that panicked call. Learn how to mine your database, have different communication plans for each tranche. You won't have a tranche, by the way, till you know how to mine it, and you can put them in certain categories and have very specific communication plans for each one so that you can reestablish yourself as a professional. By the way, you might not have realized this, but that's why you're with me. I'm your mortgage pro. You went into your mortgage at 2.5%. By the way, blunt force trauma, you're getting 5.4. And by my calculation, we're going to have a problem because your debt service ratios were maxed going into this thing the last time. Obviously, we know the stress test and everything. A lot of times it's not about requalifying. It's just a sheer sticker shock. You've paid
Yep.
your mortgage off for 5 years. And by the way, your mortgage payments go $1,800, so data. You've got to understand it. You have no excuse, and you have more resources that are free than ever before. The thing I've learned about CENTUM, so yeah, I said I wasn't going to talk about CENTUM a lot, but something that we've learned over the last 2-3 years: stop trying to figure things out. You know what I mean? Like a successful business will pay professionals to do things for them. And that was something that in the first 3 years of CENTUM, it was Band-Aid. We were startup mode. Oh, I've got a certain amount of knowledge. I've got people on the team that know a certain amount of knowledge. If you're a big business, you want to maximize profits. It fascinates me where somebody doesn't want to part with $1,000 to find 20,000.
Yep.
Blows my mind. You've all got war chests. You've all got a little bit of money. You've got time, and you've got tons of free resources. I would implore any single mortgage brokerage. I just talked about it on this last call. Dive into your business. You have gold in your own hills. It is
Yes.
called your database. What are you doing about it? Ironically, that is the lowest acquisition cost business you're going to get. Outside of just organic social media, which, by the way, you're competing with a whole bunch of other people. Yes,
Yep.
it does happen, especially if you're in a smaller community. Look at Brandon. I was the only one doing it. Smaller communities, not everyone has the hustle mentality kind of thing, especially because we're supposed to cancel hustle culture. But anyways, I digress.
I didn't get that
Um,
memo.
yeah, right. Yeah.
Anyways,
Well,
anyways.
yeah. You and I are both guilty of it. The moral of the story is, maximize your ROI with your lenders. And more importantly, now is the time to, by the way, don't just mine your data because it's slow right now. I don't mean you just pay somebody to mine it right now. Bring in professionals that can set this up ongoing. Now's the time.
Yep.
Now is the time, right? Optimize your business, both from where is every mortgage going and are we getting top dollar for it? Is every piece of data sitting in my database, is it actually bearing some sort of ROI? And then the last one would be training. And by the way,
Yeah.
that's also from the tech side as well. But training, now is the time to double down on your agents. So many broker owners were like, I don't have time to train. I don't have time to do team meetings. It's way too busy. Now is that time. Part of that, and this is where I get geeky, and I think only you would appreciate it to this level, but this is times I would get in the war room with the agents and say, look, you need that email address. You need this. You stop
Yes.
skipping these things because you don't realize how much that's costing you by
Yep.
not having data data is currency, right?
Yep.
So I actually just had a talk with a brokerage there that had some gaps in their data, right? And I was like, but yet they were so fascinated and excited about their new CRM. And I know you would find the humor in that. So they just spent a whole bunch of money on CRM, and half their files they didn't even collect email addresses on. And they're like, oh, we're gonna kill it. And it's like, it's fun. It's fun. Anyways, that would be my advice. And the final thing that I try to say every single time, be a good human. Like, it's cheesy as hell, but like, love is the best thing we do. And we learned that over the pandemic, over the longest time. And I'm not trying to be hippie and idealistic. What I mean by that is I want to go back to my original point with real estate agents. That's how I'd like to close off. Just show up for people. If you want something out of them,
Yeah.
show up for them. You know what I mean? Like, just put people first and get out of this defensive, well, if I expose myself, if I go first, I might not win. The simple
Yep.
act of going first and helping somebody else is a win. Everything else and you'll feel it the second you do it. Everything else you get after that is gravy. And I promise you, if you go out of your way to put someone first, it is going to come back tenfold.
Yeah, I could not agree more. Chris, that's fantastic. Thank you for being on the show. Where do people go to get more information about you? How do they connect with you and Centum?
Yeah, probably easiest way for me. I'm pretty easy to Google. So just Google Chris and CENTUM. You'll find all the stuff. If you're an Instagram user, I'm Chris Turcotte _ Guy hasn't used his Instagram in over 6 years, and he will not answer a DM. So at Chris Turcotte is not me. At Chris Turcotte _ is me on Instagram. If you want to learn all about Centum, it's super simple. Join centum.ca. It's a website that talks about who we are as an organization, why we believe in family, and why I biasly believe we have the best damn value proposition in the business.
That is amazing. Chris, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks, Chris.